Hey, welcome to our special edition of First Aid Podcasts. We'll stop doing that. We are joined by Chris Perkins, author of Let's Talk About Six, which, especially if you're in Liverpool, I'm sure you've seen at your local bookstore. Well, can't get this straight. Charlie's on his phone. Is he still muted? Oh, he is muted. Anyway, so Chris, thank you so much for joining us again.
It's my pleasure.
We had the pleasure of Chris joining a whole group back at the very start of the pandemic. We had a very fun evening, which I'm not sure how late it was for you, because obviously you're 5 hours behind us. But it's currently 11:30 where you are.
It's about 11:30. This time I'm in a different room further away from the house. I think last time we were interrupted by my wife saying, "How long are you going to be, and when are you going to stop making less noise?" Well, I think I'm safe from that tonight.
I do remember that. You also mentioned that you were in a shed. Is that this looks like a very high-end shed to me?
Yeah, I call it the shed, but we call it the summer house, which makes it sound very grand. It's like it's a brick-built shed which has been converted into an office.
Okay.
So we're just down here.
I don't think you'd be a Liverpool fan and have a summer house. I don't think that's...
No. My wife calls it a summer house. I don't.
It sounds very Enid Blyton. That's a... But,
it allows you to have many more people living in your house to go to a pub, right?
It does, yeah. We can socially distance in here. So when the game's on tomorrow, we're going to be socially distanced throughout the different rooms of the house, maybe. Yeah.
We could go down that path.
Yeah. Don't, because I'll get fined. There's big fines for breaking social distance.
Thanks, Charlie. Yeah. Just
don't get me into trouble.
So do we need to mute you now, or can you?
It probably wouldn't hurt.
Very honest of you. So last time we got to talk about the book. So I think we've got quite some familiarity with it. I'd certainly like to go back though and explore some of the kind of the big events that you describe in it. And because you talk about your story in terms of like how you first remember Liverpool, you talk about like that season where we won the European Cup for the 6th time, and I specifically love the whole thing where you talked about your experience of the night we beat Barcelona 4-0. So where do we begin? Let's start at the beginning. That's not a bad place to start, is it? So what's your first memory? And I know you do talk about some of this in the book. If you haven't bought the book yet, then we recommend it.
My first memory of the football. I mean, my first memory of the football probably is my first memory. It's the only thing. And I remember going to a game. I went with my dad, and it was the only game I ever went to with my dad. Because it was my granddad who was the Liverpool fan, and my granddad got tickets for me and my dad to go. And we went, and it was a Wolves game, and it was December 1977, and I was about 5, just turned 5, and I can remember it, and I remember a couple of things about it. One, that it was a big thing that my granddad had got me and my dad tickets. I remember that we were in the Kemlyn Road. I remember that my mum said I had to wear my pajamas underneath my clothes to keep me warm. And I remember it was Wolves, and I remember Sammy Chung was the manager. And I remember my dad pointing out, "Oh, there's Sammy Chung," and he ran across the pitch. And we weren't far from the Kop. We were on the 3rd row of the Kemlyn Road, I think. And on the Kop end penalty area line, so about 18 yards out. Yeah. And I remember looking up at the Kop and wondering how that worked, because we were all sitting in rows in the Kemlyn Road and looking up at this Kop and wondering how that worked. And I can clearly remember those things at 5, but it's only later when you go back and you actually find out. I had to then research what game was it. It was a kind of evening game. It was against Wolves. It was in the late 70s. So I was fortunate because they were actually European champions. They won the European Cup that year. So for that to be your first game was quite exciting. And Kenny Dalglish, that was his first season, because they won the European Cup with Keegan, and then Keegan had left and Dalglish had come in. So it was the 77-78 season. And yeah, I remember Kenny Dalglish being there because he was the big player. He was the, whatever the big star is now, he was the big star at the time. And at 5 years old, you would know Kenny Dalglish, and my dad would point out, well, there's Dalglish. And other than that, it's just these impressions of the game, really. And then you find out more about the game. It turns out that they'd actually played the day before against Nottingham Forest. So they were playing 2 games in 2 days, and it was virtually the same team. I think maybe just Jimmy Case who wasn't playing. Yeah, so very different time. So that's my first memory of it, and yeah, it was good. I remember it. Yeah.
Did the Reds win?
It was 1-0. They won 1-0. It was Phil Neal penalty, but I don't remember any of that. That only comes from looking back.
Yeah.
I have an idea in my head that at one point Dalglish kicked the ball and it hit the referee and knocked the referee over. And I don't know whether that's an actual memory. And I'm guessing that game wouldn't even be recorded now. Everything's recorded, but yeah. If it was, it would be in colour. I'm not that old.
Well, I may be that old. And
you may be, Paul. Yeah,
I may have been at that game, but I have no recollection. In fact, I think after the success they'd had, 77, 78 seemed like a bit of an okay season because they only won the European Cup.
Yeah, and that whole thing. I mean, it was the season after. It was the 78, 79 season where they kind of broke all the records. But at that point, you had kind of Nottingham Forest on the scene as well. I just, another thing about it, when I wrote the book, a guy I used to work for who I still keep in touch with, I was chatting with him and I told him I'd written this book, and I was kind of planning on publishing it, but wasn't. Anyway, I sent it to him just to get an idea of, is it worth publishing? Is it worth doing anything with? And it turned out it was his first game as well. And he called me a couple of days later. He said, yeah, this is unbelievable because your first game was my first game. And he's probably 5 or 6 years older than me. But yeah, real coincidence.
Oh, that's awesome. It's funny. All I remember from my first games are like the noise. I don't even know if I went back to check who the first game was against. It might have been Fulham. Anyway, but yeah, it's funny how you don't remember the football.
No, you don't. And I think now, I've taken my son to see the game when he was maybe 6 or 7 years old. And it's more the experience of the game and the noise and the surroundings of the game rather than actually remembering what goes on. Yeah. Nice. But yeah, you kind of get hooked by it. And from that point on, it was always my granddad who took me. So I probably never went to another game until probably 1981, 82. So went nearly 5 years before you go to another game. But from then on, I always went with my granddad.
Did your granddad have a season ticket?
Yeah, he's had a season ticket since the kind of 60s, but it was in someone else's name.
Okay.
And he'd bought it off a guy who he worked with in the mid-60s, and he'd had it for, well, it was 20 years. So it was funny how it was funny. It was strange how it worked out, but he had his season ticket, and there was a guy who sat next to him who wasn't well. So in the 1984-85 season, so this is a few years on, and I would go on this other guy's ticket. Joe Gittins, his name was, and he was ill. And at the end of the 85 season, Joe died, and his wife called my granddad and said, do you know anyone who wants this ticket? And there was a thing at the time that, the average age in the Kop was about 130 because all these tickets were just passed on. So my granddad had his that he'd had for 20 years in a different name. And I had mine, and that was the year of Heysel, but also the Bradford disaster where all the people died. So there was an open amnesty to say, right, you could change your name on the ticket. So and that was the season I got mine. So I've always had mine in my name, and my granddad changed his to his name at that time.
Oh, wow.
But I've always had it in that name right from 1985. So,
So yours was right
you
next
got
to your
Joe's.
granddad.
sorry, say again.
Yours was right next to your granddad then.
Yeah. We sat together, and we sat together. The first season I got it, he bought it for me. So that was the 85-86 season. And I got it for my birthday. And then the next season he bought it for me again. And then the third season he said, "Look, son, you'll have to get your own this season." So at the time, a main stand ticket was £90 and a cop ticket was £45, and I was about 15. So I became a Kopite. So it was a financial decision more than anything. Otherwise, I think I'd still be up in the main stand. Yeah. So I had 2 years with him, and then I went into the Kop.
So it's probably good that you're not one of the old guys in the main stand complaining about everything, because that's the reputation, right? It's the main stand people are more likely to complain about stuff.
Yeah, and it was at the time, and
Yeah.
you'd hear people moaning and this, that, and the other, and it was actually nice because I started then. So when I first got my ticket, I would have been probably 12, 13, and then by the time I get into the Kop, I'm probably 14, 15. And you can really, kind of let yourself go in there, because it was standing in the Kop at the time, and it was fabulous. It was just a completely different experience. But I had my elder cousin, and he kind of looked after me for the first season in there. He was kind of well versed in there, and he'd been all over Europe and was and still goes to every European away game. So he looked after me for the first year. And then I was allowed to, as you get older, you kind of have different routines in terms of going to the game. And then I started going to the game with friends from school, and we migrated from, at the beginning, I was right down at the front of the Kop. And then we ended up right in the middle of the Kop, which was unbelievable. Yeah.
One of the things I'd love to do, actually, is of all the guests we've had on, is to kind of map where they were on the Kop at some point in time, because we've definitely had people like, oh, I was definitely at the if you look at it, I was on the left. People were, I'm definitely on the right. Oh no, I was totally in the middle. Yeah, it would be an interesting map, I think.
It would, and people generally go to the same place every time. That you have your place that you go to, and it's the same. And even though you're standing, you're surrounded by the same people.
Yeah.
And for the first year, maybe 2 years, I was almost eye level with the pitch, and I was behind the Kemlyn Road post. And so that would be the 87, 88 season. So that was when John Barnes came. So you were so close to John Barnes because he was coming down the kind of left wing on the Kemlyn Road side, and you were looking up at him, and you're so close to him. It was unbelievable. And Steve Nicol played left back behind him. It was an amazing experience, really. And then you can also see, there's a famous game where Liverpool won 5-0. They beat Nottingham Forest. I'm on there. You can see me in there being kind of thrown around, and it was really good. It was really good.
If you guys haven't seen that game, or anyone watching hasn't seen that game, definitely worth a YouTube. I think a guy called Tom Finney, who was one of Shankly's favorite players in kind of his era, said he was the best footballer in the world. Said he had never seen a finer exhibition of football than Liverpool put on that night. And the important thing is, Nottingham Forest at that point were like second in the league.
They were up there, yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
They were not like, they were a team that other people didn't want to play. But it was an amazing performance.
It's one of those games that I've heard a lot about, and I've never seen it. So
I was also at the game. I must have been about 30 meters away from you, because my season ticket used to be in the second block of the Kemlyn,
right,
20 rows back. So I also had the pleasure of seeing Barnes just kind of.
You'd have been right there as he's running down the wing, then right behind him. And it was unbelievable. And you see that there was a picture, I put it on my Twitter feed actually this week. It was a picture of him in that silver kit the first year. Yeah. And it really does take you back. And there's something about it where he's like your big hero. And the longer it goes on, I was kind of brought up with Dalglish, But then going to the game, Barnes becomes the hero. And you see pictures of him now, and the way he carries himself now, and you know, he's this advocate for Black Lives Matter and things like that now, and he's such a hero. But to see him then in his prime, some of the pictures of him are amazing. Yeah.
It's funny you say that in your experience, most people end up back in the same place that they had seen the game before. I've been to one game at Anfield. It was a Manchester United game in January. And I would absolutely love to get in the Kop again and see another game. If I'm not in the Kop, I want to be either in the main stand or in the Kenny Dalglish stand right at the Kop end, so I get a better view of the Kop, because it was great to be a part of it, and I absolutely loved it. Especially we're going to win the league, but I would love to just see the Kop as a whole. You didn't get a very good view of the Kop from the Kop, and just to me it was pretty amazing to be a part of that crowd. If I'm not a part of that crowd again, I want to get a good first-hand look at them.
You want to be able to see it, and I've stayed in the Kop ever since, and there's only very few games where I've been out, and one of them was the Liverpool Dortmund game, where we won right in the last minute, and it was an amazing game. But Lovren, yeah, and for whatever reason, I wasn't in the Kop that night, but I was watching the Kop, and I'm thinking, good God, what a game not to be in the Kop. I mean, you think, oh, it's an amazing game just to be there, but you're watching the Kop and you're thinking, oh God, I wish I was in my seat right now. We'd be all over each other. So, yeah.
It seems a weird topic now that there's no fans in the stands at all. But do you think we'll ever get back to a safe standing kind of experience at Anfield?
I'd like to think so, yeah. The last 2 seasons, is it 2 seasons or last season at least, no one sat down. No one sat down at all. And what would happen for the past, 10 years or so, is you sit down for the majority of games, but the big games, you United, Everton, you stand up. But for the last season, everyone has just stood up every game. So it's, I mean, obviously it's difficult because of the reasons that we don't have standing. But I'd like to see it come back. I'd like to see it come back.
So Chris, last week we had Damien Cavana, if you know him. He's on the Anfield Wrap. He was a Hillsborough,
Yes.
And he after we'd finished recording, we talked about safe standing, and he said that one of the things that the Hillsborough support group will listen to are people who are actually at the stadium on that day, and his perspective was, it could work, but there's questions that need to be answered about, how people would leave the stadium if there were problems. But overall, he left the impression that felt like it would be a long time before it would be accepted at Anfield.
Yeah, I think so. I think because of that legacy, there's extra questions going to be asked. I was there at Hillsborough on the day, and God, don't want to open a can of worms, but at the moment, I'd move back to safe standing. I enjoy standing up. There's something good about doing it, and if you can do that in a safe way, I think the safe standing and the way the safe standing is set up at the moment, where you see it in other places, it's probably safer than us standing up when we're supposed to be sitting down. The police. It's between 12 and 15 minutes in the first half, and between 12 and 15 minutes they tell everyone to sit down, but no one's going to sit down. Everyone's just standing up. So if that's going to be the case, then they should look at making it safer. Difficult question though.
Question I don't really know the answer to. Didn't UEFA used to fine teams, clubs who had fans standing up when they weren't supposed to? They still do that? No.
Really?
I don't know.
So I think the Dortmund game, for example, Liverpool got fined by UEFA because the crowd wouldn't sit down because they said they were blocking the exits.
Huh.
Um,
And that's if you should be sitting. Is that in the era when there was like standing? Like I know a lot of,
no, this is
I watch a lot of German and there's like almost every German stadium has a standing section.
Yes.
There's some of them. I was just watching a couple weekends ago the Union Berlin game, and they have 3/4 of their stadium is standing, and they have the bars and all that kind of stuff. So it's an interesting topic. I know, and there's as you said, Chris, there's other things for Liverpool that factor into that more so than just is it safe. There's definitely history factors into it and experience and things like that.
Paul, you said it was the Dortmund game that was
2016. I think we got fined for people standing.
Well, that's crazy. I was in the Kop. I couldn't tell you how comfortable my seat was, and I certainly was not the only person. I don't think anyone sat down for the entire game. It's like a placeholder. This is where you get to stand.
Yeah.
There's a seat there, but don't worry about it.
It is, and what happens as well is that certain people then move to other parts of the Kop because they'd rather stand with their friends, and because no one's sitting down, there's room for people to stand. So you begin to see empty seats in the Kop because people have migrated, and generally where we are, we're a little bit older, but I know towards the back of the Kop, it's a lot more lively. So people will kind of migrate and they'll stand up with their mates in the back, which is great. That's where you want to be. That's what I've realised with us not being in the ground at the moment is that's what I miss about the football. It's sitting in there and with your mates. It's one thing to watch the football, but it's that kind of interactive experience. And I guess we can't have it at the moment because we're all stood too close together. But that's what brings people to the game.
So let's talk about one of those nights where that you wouldn't want to be anywhere else. Because I was really struck by how you described the Barcelona experience, the 4-0 evening.
Oh yeah.
Tell. So, if you haven't read the book, this is where you should be looking at what goes on in the book. Yes, yeah, right.
So I'll put this on. This is the moment I can put this on, isn't it? Look, I can go like that. You see.
Okay, that's great.
All the preparation.
Just don't use your hands.
No, I know it's.
I can't see your ears.
No, I know they've all fallen off. It's all a bit strange. I think I need to be wearing a green top or something. I'm not too sure how it works. So the Barcelona game was just incredible, and you kind of go into it 3-0 down, and I know, and in the book, and the thing about the book is it's not written retrospectively. The book is written as it happens. So there's certain parts in the book where I look a little bit silly because I've said certain things that didn't transpire. Where I say, do we really want Alisson? Is Alisson really going to make such a big difference at the beginning of the season? But then there's others where this is not me looking back after we've won the European Cup and writing about it. This is me sitting in the car before I drove to, I had to drive to the Barcelona game because I was working, and sitting in the car on my phone. And about 80% of the book's written on my phone, where it's just kind of coming out of my head and through my fingers and onto the phone. And you say, right, and I got myself into such a state before that game where we were going to win. We were going to win that game, and I don't know how we were going to win it, but we were going to win it. And all we needed was an early goal. And I think I was saying it something like, well, God, I need to calm myself down here, otherwise I'm not going to get into the ground. And we went in, and it was the 38th second where I knew we were going to do it. And it was Fabinho went through the back of Messi. Messi was running through, and the worry before the game is that everyone's just going to be looking at Messi and thinking, oh my God, it's Messi, and we should all fall down in front of him because he's the greatest player ever. And Fabinho just went through the back of him and took the ball off him. And the whole crowd just jumped on and went, right, this is us now. This is the way we're going to approach this game. And I think in the aftermath of that, that was where Robinson starts tousling his hair. And Messi gets all, and Messi then kicks off.
But just saying.
And that was in the very first minute. Yeah. And then it kicked off, and then we score after 5 minutes, and you think, right, we're going to do this. We are just going to do this. And then it's the pace of the game for the whole time. And you've got Suarez, who's like this pantomime villain. And don't get me wrong, I love Suarez. I think he's one of the best players I've ever seen there. Absolutely adore him. But on the night, he was the biggest bastard in the world. And everyone hated him. And everyone was all over and I don't think these Barcelona players knew what to do, because it was it's feral in there. It's just feral everyone's just so emotional and pouring everything out onto the pitch. And then we get those 2 quick goals in the second half with Wijnaldum, and you don't know what to think. When it came to the 4th goal, they were actually making a substitution. And my mate who I stand next to, he said to me, who'd he bringing on? Who'd he bringing on? And I'm kind of looking over to the dugout, and they scored. Liverpool scored, Origi scored, and we missed it. And I think half the crowd missed it. And you think, well, what's happened there? Because you're waiting for the corner to happen, and you're seeing who they're going to bring on, and he scored. And then you look at the clock, and you've still got half an hour to play, and that was a long half hour. That was a bloody long half hour. But you come out and just overwhelmed with the whole thing. And the thing that struck me, and it happened about 10 minutes before the end of the game. And my mum used to say certain things, and one of them was this thing, I was there, and it was a Welsh comedian,
Max Boyce.
And Max Boyce, and it was his catchphrase, and I was there. And for some reason, I thought, I was there. I'm here this night. I'm here. And I just got back to the car, and again just got onto my phone before I drive off, and you think, right, this is what I'm thinking right now. And then you drive home, and the next day I got to kind of reflect on the game a little bit more. But just the 10-minute walk back to the car, and you just chatting to people like, oh my God, that's something I've never seen before. And people were almost, you come out of the ground and there's singing and there's real emotion. And as you get 5 minutes away, it's very quiet, because people are almost just trying to work out what they've just seen and process it. Yeah, it was great. Best game ever. Best game ever.
I tell you what, it must have seemed like a half an hour, but I think the Origi goal was at about 80 minutes.
For
the corner taken quickly Origi goal was about 80 minutes.
It was only something like 60, wasn't it? 60 or 65 minutes.
Oh. No, those were the Gini Wijnaldum brace, and then the Origi goal was another 20 minutes later.
Maybe it was 3. I remember looking, and it was 60, 65, and thinking we've got a long way to go here.
Yeah, I'm sure it seemed like
that's after
the. You just read it in the book.
But I tell you what, the thing that you got to remember that Suarez, for the shithouse that he was, and the cop giving him the old F off Suarez every time he touched the ball, he was the one who got Gini on the ground by kicking out at Robbo later in the first half to injure him. Yeah. And then Gini, who was so pissed that he didn't start the game, came out like, well, I'm going to teach you guys.
Yeah, and he was so annoyed. I mean, to even say it in the post-match interview, where his emotions must have been sky high at that point, and it came out. I was pissed off not to get in that first team, and rightly so. Yeah,
do it a little more, Klopp. What the hell's wrong with you? You should sub on Gini in the second half every game.
So I do have one observation, because James Milner had the ball in the corner for at least 15 minutes. So I don't know what you were so concerned about.
Milner.
Well, they did have a couple of shots after we went 4-3, but it seemed like for the last 10 minutes, Milner had the ball down in the corner, kept getting fouls and corners, and
he did. And for all their possession, there was no point where they had a real chance. I don't think, or they probably did have chances, but not a chance where you think, oh my God, we've got away with it. There's another point earlier on, which was last game of the group phase, where Alisson makes the save in the very last minute. Yeah. And that's like an oh my God moment. And that kind of turned the whole season on its head, because that guy should have scored. He just should have scored. And there's no way
Ancelotti and his
right to
boys.
say that. Yeah.
Just
So
one quick aside, I was on TV that night. I was in the main stand, like right behind the dugout, and they were like looking at Ancelotti. You can only see me if you've got a magnifying glass, and but I was there.
Definitely.
It was weird though, because my experience of that game, which is I saw 2 Champions League games that season, was that we were so on top in that game. It just felt like how could they possibly have a chance to equalize? I know what your experience was.
That was a nervous game because 1-0 got us through, and 1-1 didn't, and it was one of those ones where there were only certain score combinations that were going to get you through. So to be sitting there, and I want to say it was 1-0, and that was, or was it 2-0?
No, it was 1-0, but like I think Mane had like 14 chances.
He did.
We had so many chances in the game. It never felt like, oh, we're just going to score a second and it's all going to be over. So to get to that point felt like maybe it's not meant to be.
And as he went through on goal, you think, right, that's it.
Yeah.
There is a point where you think, oh shit, this is it. We've held out for this long, and that's it. Because they were that good. They beat Paris Saint-Germain in the first game, and that was a fabulous game.
Yeah.
And then they had these terrible performances. So to have to squeeze through on the last game is always like a little bit disappointing, isn't it?
The moment that ball went over Lovren's head, it was like, uh-oh, this is trouble.
Yeah, well, that's just Lovren all over, isn't it? It's gone.
Oh, okay. I thought Sean left.
Which game was that? The Lovren over the head? Because Matip.
The Napoli game.
No, it was Matip was playing.
Was it Matip?
Yeah, it was. And I know this because like at the very end of the game, some Napoli player like jumped into him when he was jumping for a header. He landed awkwardly and didn't play for another 2 months. Yeah.
That sounds like Matip.
Not Matip, right? Got this.
Yeah. Come on.
Matip.
So our friend Jonathan Nagar, who I hope is watching this, is from Cameroon, and his pronunciation is Matip.
That sounds like insider information.
Yeah. Okay. We'll go with that then. Yeah.
It doesn't seem like something you should be chastised over, right? Really?
Well, except that the Arlo White, the annoying NBC commentator that we have here in the US, keeps calling him Martip, which is such a southern.
Well, that's wrong, isn't it? That's wrong.
Fucking thing to say, yeah.
Excuse me, Paul. Everything's relative, and he's not Martin Tyler. So let's be real here.
Yeah.
But he's not done enough research to know how to pronounce Matip's name.
He's still not Martin Tyler.
No.
I'm thinking John
Martin Tyler's nearly 80,
Is he?
Yeah.
So he's hated for Liverpool for 60
like
years.
76, 77.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Arlo White's like phenomenal compared to that guy.
But he's just been a fixture. I don't know how long he goes on for. He just goes on forever. He's just a kind of voice. It's the voice you associate with Premier League over here. But, he's so biased against Liverpool. It's untrue.
Yeah.
Absolutely untrue.
But at least
we fortunately don't have to listen to him very often.
No.
Champions League occasionally.
He's in the commentary box and he's not on refereeing the game. That's the good news. Right.
Yeah.
So, you finish your book. We win the 6th European Cup.
Yes.
And I think last time we talked, we hadn't guaranteed the 19th league. But I think you said this was the more important thing to win the league than European Cup.
Definitely.
Yeah. So we did it.
We did it.
How was last season?
What, post lockdown? Once we actually got back into it.
So the whole thing. Hey.
It was amazing because we were on such a roll. We were on such a roll, and they were so good. And we got to a point where I think by Christmas, by probably December, everyone knew we were going to win the league, but no one actually wanted to say it. I think there was this game that Charlie was at where it just erupted in the last minute. We're going to win the league. And people had been almost chastising each other to say, well, don't jinx this. And then it just erupted in that last minute. And for me, that's the defining moment, because after that, with everything that happened, it's a crying shame. And that's the moment I remember. It's Salah scoring that second goal against United. It's Alisson running down the pitch. It's the whole crowd just then saying, we're going to win the league. And it was just spontaneous because everyone was thinking it, but no one wanted to say it. And that was it. And then, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks later, we're all in lockdown and we're not allowed to watch the football. So that for me is what I'll remember about that season. And it got to a stage where I'm a bit of a stats kind of freaky guy. I have little spreadsheets doing this, that, and the other. And you're looking at it and you're thinking, how many points can we actually win here? How many records are we going to set? At what point are we going to get to 100 points in this, that, and the other? And then I think just before lockdown, we got beat by Watford, and that kind of burst that balloon of being unbeaten. And then there was just this 2 or 3 months of not knowing whether we were going to win, whether we weren't going to win, whether we were going to play the rest of the season out. So I'm just holding on to that moment where Salah scored because it was amazing. It was amazing because that was the point you knew we're going to win the league, and we've waited for so long.
I lucked out. That was the moment to be at Anfield.
Yeah, it really was. It really was that season. Yeah.
I think generally though, it has to be when you win the league. It can't almost be the last game. It really has to be a sequence of experiences, unlike winning a cup when you've got like these highs and hopefully super highs. So, if you think post lockdown, was there a memory that you kind of, when you write your next book, which obviously can't be long in the making,
right?
What would be the moment
post lockdown?
Yeah.
There was a game, I think it was Crystal Palace, where we were brilliant. I think it was Crystal Palace. Yeah. We had an average game against Everton. I think it was 0-0. And then we absolutely destroyed Crystal Palace. And it was strange because that was watching that, and I watched it on my own at home. And it's deciding whether you want to listen to it with this artificial fan noise or whether you just want to listen to them talking to each other. And it's almost trying to watch the game in a different way, because generally you can kind of watch a game on TV or watch a game in the ground based on the noise and the excitement, and there wasn't that noise and excitement. Even this artificial noise is just a nonsense. Yeah. So watching it and trying to see through and see how good they actually were that game, and that's what I remember. Then we got beat by City, and then we won it. And actually winning it for me personally was a bit of an anticlimax. It was. I was kind of sitting at home. I knew that if City hadn't won or didn't win, then we were going to win. And I was sitting there watching TV. I was working actually. I had my laptop on my knee, and I was watching something on TV. And I checked the score with 10 minutes to go, and I can't remember whether City were getting beat or it was a draw. And I thought, oh my God, we're going to win the league here. We're going to win the league. And I went outside and I had me AirPods in and just listened to the last 5 minutes. And it sound awful. It was a real letdown that I was sitting on my own in the back garden listening to it, and I wasn't with other people. And even and it was like nights, it was the middle of summer here. And it just so happened we had one of these bouncy castles in the back garden.
As you do. Yeah.
As you do. I don't quite know why we had one there. I think we'd just done something to just amuse the kids a little bit because everyone was in this lockdown situation. And we had this bouncy castle. And we won the league, and all these fireworks started going off all over the place, and I could hear people shouting and screaming. And I live 15 miles outside Liverpool, but I could hear people around me, and I'm kind of WhatsApping and trying to with other people. But there was a real kind of. I even went on this bouncy castle and had a bounce, but it didn't get me going. It wasn't enough, and I thought, God, I've waited so long for this, and now it's a disappointment. And it wasn't until we actually picked up the league. It was kind of a little bit lost on me. and I spoke to a few of my friends as well, and they said it was the same with them. They didn't feel like we won the league. And at the same time, we're in lockdown. We're watching these people in Liverpool who are partying, and there's thousands of people at Anfield. And part of me's thinking, well, you shouldn't be doing that because we're all supposed to be in lockdown. And Klopp said, don't do that.
Yep.
So you've kind of broken that kind of bond of these Liverpool fans. And I'm not criticising them because they wanted to let all that out. I'm probably a bit jealous because I didn't let that out. And it was only when we actually lifted the trophy that I actually got really quite emotional. You know, and even then I was sitting there on my own, watching it on TV, and they lifted the trophy, and you think, right, okay, we've done it, and I've waited 30 years for that.
Uh-huh.
I was 18 last time, and now I'm nearly 50. And, you know, so, you know, it's good and it's satisfying, but it's a shame that we haven't all been there.
Yeah.
We haven't been there. Yeah. So
I had that thought at the United game and not knowing what was going to happen with the lockdown, it seems like when this is finally done and dusted, it's probably going to be anticlimactic because nothing can be, you know, can reach the pinnacle that you know reached. And
yeah, so
I'm disappointed that I was right. I wish I was wrong. You know, certainly for people in Liverpool, I wish it could have been more of, you know, like a real climax and a real like, wow, this is it. And it almost seems like that climax is yet to come, you know?
Yeah. I would say,
sorry,
so just because I've seen Liverpool win the league a lot of times at my great age. The only thing I'd say is there were a ton of seasons where it was like a bit, So the one big memory I have is 1973. I don't know how old I was. I was in the paddock because I wasn't big enough to be on the Kop, and Liverpool needed to draw against Leicester to win the league. It was the dullest game of football ever, and the only redeeming characteristic was they got the trophy and they ran around the field, and Bill Shankly was there for like moments. But the overall thing was not great. So actually the celebration they had on the TV was like, wow, that was far more powerful than stuff I remember of kind of when we won the league with 5 games to go. So
going back to 1990, which was the last time they won it, I was at the game, but I don't remember it. You know, it's not something that sticks in my mind as one of the things. It's just like, well, it's just another league. Because we've been winning it for the past, throughout my kind of consciousness, we'd always been winning the league, so we continue to do that. Yeah.
Chris, wow, that's an awesome memory. Let's close with looking forward. So I'll preface this by saying I think hopefully I only texted Sean about this. I'm looking forward to winning number 20 and number 7, and then we lost to Aston Villa, and now I'm like, What are your thoughts about what's going to happen going forward
this season?
Yeah,
I think the 7-2 was strange. It was a strange result, and it was like a statistical freak in the same way, to an extent, that Liverpool winning for the past 2 years has been a statistical freak. You won't expect it, and I think people kind of get used to it because it's happened for 2 years. But you know, in real terms, you are going to get beat 4 or 5 times a season. And we kind of need to come down a little bit towards that. I think this thing was a statistical freak, but for me, what it said is that's not going to happen again. Klopp will not allow that to happen again. The mentality of these players will not allow that to happen again. And, you know, we're playing Everton tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow.
Yep.
And
in a few hours.
I've lost track of days. I know it's coming, but it's actually tomorrow.
Today, your time almost.
Well, it is. Yeah, it's later on today, 12 hours from now. So I don't think he'll allow that to happen again. And as much as, you know, there's a lot of talking up of Everton this week and Dominic Calvert-Lewin and all that type of stuff, I don't think Klopp will allow us to do it again. We'll win. And we'll go on and we'll continue to win this season. So
you still think number 20 and number 7 are in our future?
I think number 20. I think number 20. Number 20 is yeah. And number 20 is more important than number 7 to me.
Yeah.
So there's something different generationally because we talked about this in other shows. And we're closing now, but I do think, like, if you followed Liverpool and through that winning the league that many times, winning the European Cup, like, took on a larger perspective. If you saw Liverpool win the league once in the last 30 years, or even twice or three times, then I think that ends up being more important. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. For me, it was just that long.
Yeah.
And, we won the European Cup in 2005 with a very average side. And don't get me wrong, that was the best night ever. Fantastic night in Istanbul. But to win the league this year, and really now I want to win it again, but I want to win it with my mates all around me. That's what's important now.
Yeah. Celebrate them both. Look, there's no other Premier League team who has who has 6 Champions League. So we're okay on that for now. Let's just make sure we at least match the other trots over that way.
A couple of things, Charlie. We don't measure ourselves against other English teams. We measure ourselves against
English.
Other European teams. Like Bayern now has 6. We're in like short distance of Milan 7. So that's for me. That's why it's super important.
So you're saying Champions League is more important than number 20, huh?
Ooh, yeah. I just like to win both.
I'd like to retain the league and prove that it's not a freak, and just we deserve it because all other things being equal, we'd have won it the year before because they were that good. So they deserve to win it. Yeah. The
biggest message I take away though is the importance of mates and being part of something bigger. That's a fantastic message. And
that's it. And what's funny about this book is I didn't tell anyone I was writing this book. My wife, I didn't tell my wife I'd written it until I'd actually written it. Oh, by the way, I've written a book. What? What do you mean? I didn't tell any of my friends. And the intention at the beginning of the book was to get a lot of the stuff outside of the game, go into the game, because I have a lot of fun before the game. I've got some very funny friends who I go to the game with. And as it happened, they didn't get into the book. They weren't edited out. It was just, they didn't get in. And a couple of them, if they're watching this, look, Whaley, I'm horrendously sorry that you didn't get into the book more, because I know it's bruised your ego terribly. But
they just got to do better next time. Make themselves more memorable, right?
What they have to do, Charlie, and I hope he does watch this, is he needs to raise his game on the banter front. And I think if his banter was better, then he'd get into the book. But he didn't, so he won't.
How do you spell Whaley? Just so I put this in the comments.
Whale. Whale with a Y at the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Along those lines, my mate Brian is a big Villa fan, and I couldn't mention him last podcast because I didn't fucking want to. Brian from Australia, Villa, beat Leicester, and we're all good.
I feel like some
I've been holding that back for 2 weeks, yeah.
Subliminal message got offered there that I'm not sure I want to...
Eating at me.
So, Chris, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sorry, I realized my time is turned off. We must have been talking for a while. Charlie, thank you.
Is it Saturday yet?
It is in many countries, yes.
It is here. It is here. Yeah. So, so thank
you.
We made it.
Patience. Yeah. It's good. So I feel like we are long lost friends now, and that feels like one of the benefits of this whole lockdown thing. So hopefully next time crowds are allowed in and we're allowed to fly somewhere and you'll let us in, some of us will be able to catch up with you and have a pint.
Well, I'm hoping so, and I think once we're all allowed back in, I'd like to think that one of you will drop me a line and say I'm coming to the game, so you can come and try and raise Whaley's banter game.
That's great.
Maybe more than one of us.
Whaley, this episode
that book.